The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to Monday's edition of the Whitfield Report. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, recording here at Right to Offend Media Studios, and May the 4th be with you all. It is that day of the year, but today we'll be doing something a little different from what we usually do for the Monday show. I usually have a guest or an interview. But I actually am going to jump on the YouTube trending train right now, reviewing the Michael Jackson biopic titled Michael, which I saw over the weekend. I actually saw it yesterday with my folks, and I have some thoughts, because if there was a movie that had like a bigger, this movie has a giant chasm between what the critics think and what the audience thinks. This movie is currently sitting at like a 38% Rotten Tomatoes review the last time I checked it, the rating. And the audience critic score seems to be around 97%, which is a staggering disparity, and I have a few theories as to why that is. So this disparity, initially I wasn't going to go see, this movie in theaters. I was going to wait until it came out on, streaming or, Blu-ray or whatever, and then see it then. But the audience versus critic disparity really, it almost fascinated me, to be honest. And so I looked at some of the, early critical reviews of it to see what they were saying. And then I kind of wanted to go see it myself, just, to make up my own opinion. So overall, I thought the film was really well done. The most consistent critique that I saw from like Variety and Hollywood Reporter and all these other, Hollywood movie trade outlets, so to speak, is that the movie had no substance, right? They said that this was a giant MTV. And to that, I would have to say, were we even watching the same movie? Because, yes, I will say that this movie did a fantastic job of the choreography for of the music videos that they did show being shot. They did a great job in this movie of basically like a shot for shot, recreation of, the Thriller music video, Off the Wall, some of the stuff regarding that. They did a shot for shot remake basically of Michael Jackson's Billie Jean performance at the Motown 25 performance in 82, because I recently watched that performance that was televised back in the 80s, and then I saw this movie, and it was a one-for-one shot basically. Like everything from the video, and Michael's performance, and then basically the audience reaction was basically a shot-for-shot take. So the filmography was great, the cinematography was great, and the music was great. I'll get into Jafar Jackson's performance here in a little bit, because I really do think it is worth noting. He did a fantastic job overall. But I also want to address this claim that the movie had no substance and that it was just a flashy, MTV fan service movie. Because this very much has substance, I thought. It showed Michael's beginning with the Jackson 5. It showed his tumultuous relationship with his father, Joseph Jackson. They kind of painted Joe to be somewhat of, I guess, the of this movie to a certain extent. I wouldn't say cartoonishly. He wasn't like cartoonishly evil or anything, but he was just depicted as being very selfish, which, depending on who you talk to, Michael Jackson during his lifetime in various interviews said that his father could be selfish and could be abusive. I believe Janet Jackson said much the same thing in interviews. Other of his siblings said that dad, wasn't that abusive or anything like that. So, again, there's disparity, and there also, of course, may have been some Hollywood creativity regarding, the movie. But overall, I thought, that they handled the Michael and Joe relationship real well. And then they also really showcased the relationship between Michael Jackson and his mother. And you can clearly see that Michael's personality and his overall demeanor, he really got that from his mother. And they showed the relationship with his brothers a little bit. You would kind of get the impression that outside of the performing that they weren't really that close. Not that they were really antagonistic, but just outside of the music business, they really didn't spend that much time together, especially once they were grown, which, that happens among siblings as you get older. So, Hollywood versus reality, I suppose that's one of the things that you'll have to decide for yourself if you do see the movie. Now let's get to Jafar Jackson, because this was his first movie that I'm aware of. This was his on-screen debut. That's Michael's nephew, and I believe that's Jermaine Jackson's son, if I read correctly. And he really knocked out of the park. He literally looks and sounds like Michael on screen. And from what I understand, he did a lot of the singing himself on the tracks. They did dub in some of Michael's original tracking for some of the like live performances, and that was fairly apparent, in a few spots. But hey, why have Jafar sing those parts entirely when you can just, have the original as part of the soundtrack? But in the parts that he did sing, he really knocked it out of the park. You could have blindfolded me and I would have thought that was Michael Jackson singing. And they also really showed Michael's creative process, how he wrote songs, how he was always thinking musically and whatnot. So I really don't get this notion that the critics have that this movie was lacking in substance, because it seemed very substantive and really showed Michael as introspective and a deep thinker. And also the fact that he was a very caring person and very caring towards children, particularly those with, chronic illness and, terminal childhood cancer. Not to spoil the movie too much, but they showed Michael, visiting sick children in hospitals, which is, reportedly something that he actually did a lot in his, life. And he never wanted, that as like a photo op session or anything like that. He just did that in private. At least that's how it was depicted, in the movie. Now, one of the things that this movie, the critics are being really critical on, that I think is really almost dumb. The critics are complaining that none of the controversies in Michael Jackson's life are covered in this movie. And I think that that's a really dumb thing to criticize this movie in particular for, because this movie is part one of part two, which we'll get to here towards the end of the review. But the critics want to kind of lampoon this movie and criticize it for not covering the controversies in Michael Jackson's life, specifically with the allegations against him. And that really wouldn't work in this movie, because this movie covers Michael's Jackson 5 era up through the bad era, 1987. So there are about 25 years covered here, going from the 60s to the late 80s. And the allegations weren't really around until the 90s. So there's no reason in this film to cover any of those controversial things to begin with. Second of all, was this movie, in the kind of the tone that they went for here, was mostly all about Michael's, performances and his creative process and how he thought of music and what his musical vision was. So because of that, there was really no reason to dive into those controversial moments. It wouldn't have added anything to the story, I thought. This was really a celebration of Michael as an artist and as a performance. So it really wasn't needed here, in all honesty. I think it would have detracted from some things, and in fact, I guess that was one of the reasons why this movie has been split into parts. This was a part one, and then I guess sometime next year in 2027 we'll be getting part two, which will focus on his later career in life, which may cover, more of those controversies and whatnot, and some of his relationships with Lisa Marie Presley and things like that. But overall, I thought that this movie was a slam dunk. It's a feel-good movie, and this just goes to show that professional movie critics and the movie trades, like the Hollywood Reporter and Variety, are more or less useless and out of touch. And that they've been out of touch, of course, we've known that for, the past decade plus. These are, the same people who will raise a movie like Cuties on Netflix, and yet, lambast the Michael movie because it didn't cover his, pedophilia accusations enough. Which, by the way, Razor Fist has a great video kind of debunking all of that and kind of all the, hubbub surrounding that. And he actually did a whole video series on it that is worth watching. But he also did a Michael Jackson retrospective on the discography, which I thought was really well done. I'm not going to go play the entirety of that video, but I did want to play for you guys at least some of Razor Fist's initial rant against media and some of the allegations that they foisted upon Michael Jackson. The video is from about like 10 years ago now, but I think it's worth watching. And again, this is a shortened version of kind of Razor Fist debunking of the Michael Jackson Neverland documentary that came out in 2014. But even so, I thought that this was kind of well worth watching to kind of address those allegations that the media is upset that this movie doesn't address. So, let's see, cut number 2. All right, so I think regarding the controversy, that kind of sums up, everything that I need to know about, what happened. And the man is dead too, Michael Jackson, unfortunately. So he can't even defend himself from these accusations anymore. And that Finding Neverland documentary also has been debunked more or less by his family, and that came out in 2014, well after his death in 2009. So again, the media loves to go after people who aren't around to defend themselves anymore, just like they did with Lemmy from Motorhead and also Hugh Hefner and other people, but yet they won't go after Roman Polanski. The only one that they kind of went after being forced to is Harvey Weinstein, after the allegations were so, overwhelming. But aside from that, aside from the lack of, coverage of the controversy, let me put it this way. I'm glad that they didn't focus on the controversy at all for this movie, because like I said, I don't think it would have added anything to this movie. I think it would have been a distraction. And yeah, the critics can complain that, oh, this movie was just fan service for the fans. Well, isn't that what a biopic of, an artist is supposed to be? I mean, we got that 10 years ago with the Freddie Mercury biopic. We got that with an Elton John, biopic, which I still haven't seen, but I've heard that's good too. The Rocket Man biopic. They even did that with, Elvis too. So why is they never covered any, controversies with those figures? So why then is the media fixated that they didn't focus on any of the controversies with Michael Jackson for this movie? I don't understand. But again, this goes to show how there's just an overwhelming disparity between what critics think and what actual audiences think. So, in conclusion, I would definitely recommend seeing this movie and seeing it in theaters if you can, particularly because hearing, the movie's soundtrack and Michael's songs, with theatrical speakers, like, that's the best, way to experience this movie. I think I'm not one of these people who thinks that every movie needs to be experienced in some grand movie theater, but this one definitely is, because I think the performance and I think the cinematography and the soundscape really deserves to be experienced in theater. So that's my review of the Michael Jackson biopic, Michael, Part 1. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, I thought Jafar Jackson did a really good job portraying his uncle. And overall, I have no complaints regarding this film, and I recommend people see it. Now, supposedly Part 2 is in production, which will focus on Michael's later life and kind of the time leading up to his death. But that's all we know, pretty much, at this point. There's really no information out there regarding this movie, other than it's in production and we should be seeing it sometime next year. So that just about does it for today's episode. Again, I would highly recommend it. Probably going to be my film of the year, at least so far. I know we have a few other movies like The Avengers coming out this year, and I think we have a Star Wars movie coming out, but I could be mistaken on that as well. Anyway, hope everyone has a great Monday. Again, May the 4th be with you all, and I will see you back here Wednesday night with Max and Morpheus for the live show at 9 p.m. Eastern. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I will talk to you all down the road.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless, God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.